Alright, so today we're going to be taking a look at my classic Army M133 Mini Vulcan. So this is a replica I have owned for a little over a year and a half now. It has accompanied me to multiple MILSIM events, to some MIR tactical events, galactic Civil War events I've utilized it, regular weekend games, basically any variety of game you go to, I've used it at in one form or another. So this is going to be a complete overview of the classic Army M133 Mini Vulcan. I'm going to give you some information on how I felt about its performance, how I feel about its performance, what I've personally done to mine in terms of upgrades and its performance, and what you can look to expect if you are looking to buy one of these replicas for yourself in the future. So let's go ahead and cover some of the features and specs of this classic Army M133 Mini Vulcan. It is an AEG, which means the only thing you need to power this is a battery. It has a proprietary gearbox on the inside that essentially spins the 4 barrels around and fires off 4 separate cylinder pistons and 4 different cylinders, each with their own hop-up unit. So each of these barrels, the hop on it can be controlled independently from one another. You can see that right there on the inside window here. And each of the barrels in this top window is labeled 1 through 4. So you know, as you're tweaking things, which barrel you may need to tune the hop up on as you're going through and doing your hopping process, so you don't, do the same barrel twice or, get too confused, because it is a little bit of hard to wrap your mind around when you're working on 4 different barrels and 4 different buckings and 4 different hop settings to make sure that you're set on each one. Each of those springs on the inside can be changed out by just removing the 4 hex screws back here. And basically each of them will feature a quick change system, spring change system, where you have to remove a cap, and then you're basically pulling out the spring guide in the back of each one of these barrels, and you can swap out each spring on them. I got mine this unit a little over a year and a half ago now. I've been using it from MILSIMs to regular weekend games to specialty events like a Tarkov event where I'm a juggernaut, to just, like I said before, regular weekend games where you're just kind of skirmishing with smaller groups of players. I've used it at the Galactic Civil War series. We've used it in a whole different avenues in terms of gameplay. So I've got a pretty good rounded idea of this whole unit and how it operates. Over that course of the year and a half, I've probably put a little over 200,000 rounds to it. So I've definitely put it through its paces. I've done some internal upgrades to it that I'll cover here as well. But as far as the base unit, it would take 2, and I'll get to it right here, 2 11.1 volt batteries to utilize. And they're found and stored in this container here. I've got the 6,000 or 3,000 milliamp battery Titans. You could actually fit the 6,000 milliamp Titans in here as well, if that is the avenue you're going. If I would have done it all over again, I would have sprang for the 6,000 milliamp and just doubled the amount of fire time I can get out of this. Depending on how heavy your figure trigger is and how many rounds you're pushing down range, I've had the batteries last, from half day to a full day of play. But it, like I said, it all depends on how many BBs you're throwing down range. So I personally have a backup set of batteries that I have just in case my batteries do get low. The nice thing about the system here is when you have the switch turned on and you are locked into a fire mode or even in safe mode, you can see that you have a 3 battery indicator. So you're still good on battery. Once you see this start getting down to 2 or 1, when it's in its idle state, that's when you know it's time for you to swap out your batteries, because you will start not being able to utilize the system anymore. It will stop, barrels will stop spinning, you'll stop being able to shoot BBs, and that's the opposite of what you want to do in an airsoft game. I've got a couple of attachments on here myself. I've got a couple of attachments on the side here that I've put on. One is a laser, just to help with some of that quick target acquisition. It's never good to just blaze somebody right in the face if you can avoid it. So this will help line up your shot, because you're not really looking down sights when you're firing a minigun from your hip. So it's nice to have that additional point of reference for that system. There's another thing that I have on mine, which is this long extended rail, and I actually use that. I put my GoPro 360 on the end of this here, so it gives you a really wide angle view of me using the system when I'm playing games. So I like using that for footage. Then you can also get that cool visual effect of the barrel spinning around as you're shooting it too. The other thing to note on the battery and battery capacity as I jump around here, there is the 2 batteries that you have plugged in. You have a fast and a slow mode. Now, I have not done anything with mine because I wanted to showcase this. Mine came wired backwards. So right now, as it's indicated to fast mode, it is actually in its slower 25 rounds a second mode. When I flip over to the quote-unquote slow mode down there, that is actually the fast mode. So one thing to note, as you're flipping between these 2 rounds, it does take a couple seconds for it to basically boot up, and it will allow you to use ludicrous mode versus using the slower safe mode. So for mine, like I said before, right now it is set in slow mode, but to me that's fast mode in my replica. So they might have just wired this one wrong, or maybe all existing classic Army M133s are just wired wrong. I'm guessing it wouldn't take more than me just getting into this part of the switch and just flipping those 2 contacts around. I'm sure it wouldn't take more than 2 minutes, but I wanted to make sure it was something that I could point out in this video, because it might be something that other people are experiencing. So let's go ahead and switch back into the slow mode for me. The one thing you'll notice here is these light indicators, as I said before, as it's kind of switching over and showing your battery level status. So as a field owner, you might ask, okay, I might have a 30 round a second maximum that I can allow my players to do. So how can I stop someone from utilizing, the 50 rounds a second by just flipping their switch? There is a one workaround you could have for this that I've discovered. Besides, just taking your players at face value and at honor level, is the batteries themselves. You only need one 11.1 volt battery plugged in order for the system to work in its slow mode. Now, the nice thing is when you have both batteries plugged in, it syncs both those batteries up and essentially gives you double the battery capacity. But if you're super worried about somebody switching into the 50 rounds a second mode, you could ask them just to plug in one of their batteries and only operate on one of the batteries. So to show that, we'll just unplug one of these real fast, and we will go ahead and not rip the contacts out. There we go. So as far as one of the batteries being disconnected, you can see our light is still on. We'll flip to fire mode and we'll go ahead and fire. Does the system no harm to operate off of one battery. The second thing to note here is the second you try to get into sport mode, you get nothing back in terms of lights. You can't shoot it, can't do nothing. So when it's operating in ludicrous mode, it needs both of those batteries plugged in order for you to operate. So let's go ahead and plug that back in. And as you can see, we'll go ahead and be in slow mode and fire, and then we'll switch it over to sport mode. And it works just fine when both batteries are plugged in. Speaking on the note of other upgrades I've done for this system. So I personally have installed the 4 barrels. I put tight bore barrels. The 6.03 Prometheus barrels. I've R-hopped those, and I'm using the Modify flat hop buckings, so those the buckings without nubs, and I'm using the contained hop nub, the flat one, to give a consistent hop to that R-hop patch. I found that works amazingly well. I utilize that combo in almost all of my AEG builds or my Airsoft builds where I can. The thing as far as FPS, when I got this, it was shooting about 1.1 joule, which for a squad automatic weapon, that is going to be on the low side. Most field values you're looking at are either at 1.5 or higher. Sometimes the squad automatic weapons, they have a higher joule field that they can operate in. So when I started using this, I was like, okay, let's go ahead and see what we can do to amplify the FPS and also increase the range and accuracy of this platform. Because let's be serious, like the build itself, the gun itself is kind of a meme gun, right? I mean, how accurate can you think a build could be when the barrels are spinning around, at 1,500 rounds a minute kind of deal, or 3,000 rounds a minute kind of deal? With all the physics behind everything going on, how accurate could the hop be coming out of a barrel that was halfway backwards before it started firing? So the thing that I found was you very well can easily increase the FPS, the accuracy, the groupings of this platform by giving it tight bores, R-hops, flat hop nubs, and then of course the spring system. I swapped mine out. I'm using the 135 springs. Essentially, on a regular gun, can give you like 450 FPS, and then with what I'm seeing as far as joules, I'm getting about 1.35 joules using 0.32 BBs, and that's the ASG springs. So you've probably seen them where they have the different colored end coils, so you can easily identify which ones they are. So the 135 are the heavier versions of those. It's the red ones. So I could probably end up throwing in like a Garter 150 or an M150 spring, M160 spring, and probably tap out at that 1.5 joule. I've opened up the system after putting in the heavier springs, and to me it looks like there's no visible additional wear and tear on the system, so there probably wouldn't be, and this is where we put the parentheses and the asterisks everywhere on the screen, warning, like, do not upgrade your gun because 6mm Mandalorian said it could take it, and then it doesn't take it, quote unquote, in parentheses and hashtag whatever. But essentially the next step with this is I'll probably end up putting like some 150 or 160 springs in it, and just seeing what it will do for the FPS, if it will get me to that 1.5 joules, just to maximize the range on this unit. So speaking of range, I'm fairly confident that I'm about 1 meter plus spread at about 80 meters out. So that is pretty darn good for a meme gun that I love to use. It can more than do its job at any milsim or any game you go to in terms of performance, as long as you put a little bit of love and care into it. In terms of the next segment, let's go ahead and put this all back together, and we'll skip to kind of durability. Okay. All right, as far as durability of the weapon, it has never failed on me in the field. It has never failed on me at home. It has always done what it's supposed to be doing when it's supposed to be doing it. Probably the only other time that it hasn't done that is when I've not either, turned off the safety and tried to fire the trigger, or if I have not powered on and put the weapon into fire mode of either fast or slow. The only thing that I can say is a design issue would be the fast slow button being wired incorrectly. For my particular unit, can't speak to everybody else's, might just be mine. But as far as being in the field, firing BBs, the light indicators going down will, if I'm losing battery, to know that I can swap out battery at a more convenient time. These are all great features. Everything's worked as advertised. Nothing has failed me, in terms of the functionality of the weapon. There are a couple of durability issues with the polymer that I've had, and I will be the first to tell you that I am incredibly hard on my equipment. So the first thing that I'll show you here is the slot here that you would use for your sling. Part of this has cracked off, and only half of it remains. The polymer itself is getting chewed up in those joints where I would utilize that. There are plenty of superficial blemishes on the outside of the rifle and or on the outside of the platform, as you can see. I have bumped, dinged, dropped, smashed, slid, thrown, caught, not caught the weapon so many times because I'm just hard on all my stuff. Whether it's games where you can essentially have a squad automated weapon between you and your team, so you're just chucking sliding a minigun across the room to the next person who can utilize it the best, or in other events where you're crawling through tunnels or ditches or concrete areas. It is essentially has taken about just as much as a beating as I've given any airsoft gun in my career. The only thing I would probably ask for to change is, maybe have a more durable sling point connector, whether that be the one of the only metal spots on the weapon, or something that you could swap out with later, because essentially once this goes, I'll probably have to Dremel into it, screw into it, maybe some Picatinny rail, so I can easily change out those attachments on the top of it if I need to. The other thing that I've had on here, and we'll get down to here real fast, is some of the polymer breakaway on this Picatinny rail that is here. Not a game changer, like I said. It was probably I had a GoPro mounted on this side over here before, and it probably just took too hard of a hit on the side of a wall or something, and the fulcrum of it being attached probably stripped away that unit. So that's probably where that damage came from there. It isn't a game changer. Worst case scenario, if I ever wanted, I could always just get a metal Picatinny rail and just mount that in there instead. But the way it's doing right now holds the laser sight just fine. Other terms of durability, the front itself, as we're looking at it, the front here, these caps, these are metal. They're not threaded, so if you're looking to put any tracer units on the ends of those, you're going to have to come up with a 3D printed option or some other machined option in order for you to have tracers mounted on top of the barrel here. But do note, if you do that, you are going to mess up with the reloading function on the gun. So, as we are talking about the reload function on the gun, let's go ahead and look at the reload function on the gun. For me, this is the greatest draw to the platform over other squad automated weapons. And the main reason is because of how simplistic and how completely tied into the rest of the design of the weapon is. And that makes this, in my opinion, one of the best squad automated weapons that exists for Airsoft, due to the fact that this system has the simplest mag. Okay? And anybody who has been familiar with squad automated weapons in the past knows that whenever you're dealing with a squad automated weapon, 9 times out of 10, the failure to that platform comes from its mag, its box mag, its drum mag, whatever it is, that will fail you before the gearbox fails you. Now, these two are tied together in the fact that you have just one giant spring on the inside of this, pushing the BBs down and into the quote-unquote, barrel system in order to distribute those BBs into the barrels, and essentially that is what is feeding the mag, is the centrifugal force, or what is feeding the barrels is the centrifugal force of the barrels spinning, which means that you don't have another battery in the box mag, a tube that the BBs are essentially trying to get pushed through, its own motor that is pushing the BBs into the gearbox before the gearbox starts pushing the BBs out of the barrel. That is, in my opinion, why I'll probably never get rid of this as one of my squad automated weapons, because it just works, okay? And when it comes to your squad automated weapons, that is exactly what you want out of it. You want BBs to get downrange to suppress the enemies. Done. Check. Can do that, no problem. 80 yard range, 80 meter range. And then on top of that, it's just going to keep working. As long as you have batteries for it, it's just going to keep working. So the reload function of it, you have about 2200 round BB capacity. And to get inside it, all you need to do is pinch that 2 fingers together, and then you pull out the spring, and there's your BBs. So on the inside here, you can see there's a line. That is your BB fill line. So you carry around a bottle on your back, you tilt it up, fill it up to that line, push your bulk end of the spring in there, and then push the top back on, and then you're reloaded. As long as you have that extra BBs on hand, that whole reload can, take as easy as 30 seconds. So it's not like you are taking your platform down for too long in order to swap out BBs. It can be done relatively quickly. That is, like I've said, that is the highlight of why an M133 can be freaking amazing and a game changer when you're at Milsims or anywhere else, because of the simplicity of that. You're just carrying, you know, a bottle of extra BBs on your back. You're not worrying about 2-3 different box mags, because even swapping those can take somewhere around 30 seconds too. If you have wires to plug in, things to be careful about not pinching. You know, I've had anything from M60s to M249s to what's the latest one, MG42. You know, just about any kind of squad automated weapon I've played around with, monkeyed around with, done enough with to know that there are pain points in all of them. And this is an absolute strength to this weapon platform. The second part about being at AEG, that is amazing too, because you are just dealing with batteries. You're not dealing with hoses. You're not dealing with cables. The platform itself, you know, is not light. You're probably looking at 16, 17 pounds when it's fully loaded. But it is compact. And that is my other pro of the system, is it is compact. So despite how much I've dung this up and banged it around, my opinion, the second best part, number 2, is the fact that it is so compact that when I transition to a secondary, if I'm playing events where I have to play indoors only, that it isn't as big of a hindrance on me as if I'm carrying a M249 or, you know, even especially an MG42. Like taking that inside and having to deal with that as you are trying to transition to CQB situations with an MG42 is a little bit of a nightmare. But having this, 2 foot long single point mounted device, like I've had this just kind of swinging around at my hip, and it doesn't really get in my way too much. It might clank around a little bit if I'm not paying attention. But switching over to a secondary, switching over to my sidearm, me with my van braces and everything else I have, it's good to have just a small, compact squad automatic weapon that I can use at events that do not allow their use indoors. So as we go ahead and end the video here, I'm just going to go ahead and give my final keynotes on the system itself. For being a gun or a system that is notoriously known, for its kind of memeability, it is and can be a very effective airsoft weapon on any field, whether it's regular weekend games all the way to your hardcore milsims. It can be a big asset to you and your squad. The biggest thing, as we're doing up the final talking points here, as I've used it primarily, be in my Mandalorian kit, even at milsims, is this is not a weapon that you are cheeking. It is not a weapon that you're bringing up to your line of sight to get your picture on a target. 95% of the time you are going to be walking in your BB shots on your target. It is literally a hip fire system that you can utilize. So be careful whenever you're using a platform like that to make sure you're not accidentally melting somebody's face, because that can happen. I've personally never done it, but I've seen it done before. So as far as a couple other safety features with the system itself, the weapon can be fired without any batteries plugged in. So even when it's in safe mode and the batteries are disconnected, BBs can be fired from the unit simply by operating it manually and twisting the barrel, because it is cranking back the cylinders, it's cranking back the piston head and the piston as you turn it around. And essentially when you get to that top line here, it will fire a BB. So once it gets to that point right there, it fires the BB out because the gearbox has completed its cycle. So that is a downfall of the system itself in terms of safety. But the plus side of that is that you do have the ability to chrono every single barrel independently of each other for chrono safety check. So any field owners, any organizations or promoters that are out there in terms of putting on game events, if you ever see one of these out there, always be sure to chrono each individual barrel independently to make sure that they're passing their chrono check, because each individual barrel does have its own individual spring in it. It doesn't do the person who's using it to really put in a wide variety in there, unless they just really want their BBs not only to have a big spread, but also to have a increased distance in which they're firing, because that's what you're going to see if you put in a really low spring and a really high spring, is you're going to see, you know, this wave of BBs where some are falling real short, some are going real long, which maybe could be useful if you're looking for something with, you know, surprising fire suppression, where it's just shooting out this random box of BBs every volley. For me, you know, I really like my BBs to be landing within, you know, a 12-foot area when I'm using a squad automated weapon. When I'm shooting out at, you know, 75 meters, like I don't want, you know, BBs to be landing 40 feet short, 60 feet short, or 30 feet long, 60 feet long. I kind of want to put that suppression where I'm pointing the gun. So, like I said, each individual barrel can be chronoed, so do that as, you know, you're chronoing these things. Where you're seeing this locked, I'll kind of center it over top here. That top right, I would say like 2 o'clock angle is where that is going to come out. When you crank it to there, is in the terms of as it's firing. If you're a place that needs to check rate of fire through your chrono, you're going to want to angle your chronograph basically at the 12 o'clock. So right at frickin' 12, we'll pan this up a bit. Right at 12 is where you're going to want to center your chronograph over as you're trying to chrono this thing. So learn from the errors that I've gone through in chronoing this thing. Just a little past 12 o'clock is where you want to center that when you are actually firing it. Otherwise, that 2 o'clock mark is about perfect. If you guys have any questions, girls have any questions in the comments here, go ahead and shoot them down and I'll answer them the best I can. Otherwise, I'll be kind of doing reviews as I own weapon platforms long enough. The next one will be my Chris Vector. We'll go through a couple more items that I have. You know, whether it's the Wolverine Bolt, VSR 10, and phase rifle, different platforms that I've owned for a very long time. But that's where I'm focusing this review series, is on things that I have personally field tested for at least a year, have owned for a year, and have basically, you know, been as tough on as I am tough on weaponry, which is very, very tough, and giving you guys the most honest feedback that I can on the system itself and the product. All right. If you guys enjoyed this, I think you guys know what to do. Just attend all Galactic Civil War events. That's all.